I'm super, super happy to present Camila Triaboga. She is not just an incredible, very inspiring designer. She has the biggest heart, but she's also a really good friend. Her path and her incredible heart took her a very unique route where she designs clothing to improve people's lives just by garments that she designs. She makes people's lives easier, and her experience and her meticulousness in designing these garments have taken her to work with Uniqlo in Japan, and I've heard recently LA. So really, really excited for you to learn from her today. Ask many questions. All the questions will be addressed at the end, but make sure to bring those questions in, and we'll make sure that they get answered. And with that, I will pass it on to you, Cami.
There, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
And I will mute myself.
Cool. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for all the support. It's a super honor to be able to share my work. So to start off, I'd like to start with a question. Right there. So how do you identify yourself? So I would identify myself as an Ecuadorian, Latin, perseverant, a bit forgetful, and a good observer. But what truly has become my strongest identity.
He's gonna listen to this.
Then what I assessing fashion through the lens of health, we can actually create clothing that can support our health. So this legacy starts all the way back with my great-grandfather, who started and had the vision to start. Can you hear me?
Cami, do you maybe want to remove your video and just show the slides? I think that would help.
There, can you hear me? Let's see if I move.
Yes, we can hear you.
I see. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I think I left off with this one. Okay, so after my great-grandfather's legacy, my grandpa, until now, he tells the story in dinner times, how the checkered fabric crave completely revolutionized his sales. And that continued with my father, who has developed a men's suiting factory that after coming back from his studies in Italy. So now this legacy is still seen through my cousins, that whenever you see any family meeting, you can spot us in any perfectly tailored suit. So then at the age of 10, I got my first sewing machine. It was a small sewing machine, but soon after, my dad decided to give me a big industrial machine because there was no one from stopping me from sewing all day. And then when I was in 8th grade, in the summer, I took a sewing and pattern making class full of older women. And due to my then very basic math skills, the homework seemed impossibly hard. And tears frequently fell on the paper while I was doing my homework, but waking up the next day, I couldn't wait to excitedly get back to class. So that is one side of my inherited identity. And the other one is what brought a completely different perspective to fashion. So I inherited a kidney disease from my father, And I underwent surgery during my first summer after starting to study fashion at Parsons in New York City. So the surgery wasn't that hard, but the recovery process was really long and time-consuming and painful. So every morning during this process, I had to ask my dad to help me put on my clothing. And faced with this challenge, I started to think about how for the rest of people, this could be a daily struggle as well. So for how many young adults my age, I asked myself, they needed their parents to help them dress every day. So this revelation has fueled a curiosity in me to keep designing clothing for people for whom trying to dress in the morning rapidly before work is long, painful, complicated, or even sometimes an impossible task. And following the steps has connected me to other advocates for inclusive design, as well as people from completely different fields, including engineering, medicine, and technology, who seek to rethink the items that we wear on our bodies and innovate long-standing items that shape the way we live. So some of the proposals we came up with were sometimes a bit crazy, but after a lot of team collaboration and thoughtful research, we could see scientifically quantitative improvement on how garments could impact the health and well-being of people. So for example, one of our proposals was, what if you could come up with a patient hospital, how could you improve upon the patient hospital experience and the nurse's patient care by designing a better hospital gown? So designing a better hospital gown is something that anyone who has had to wear one would immediately applaud. Because let's face it, it's not really nice to have all your back exposed. And that is if you put it on the right way to avoid any other areas from being exposed. Because so, in collaboration with patients, hospital members, nurses, including the famous designer Donna Karan, we sought out to redesign the hospital gown. So our main goals in this was to keep it comfortable and simple, to maintain the wearer's dignity, to provide easy access for nurses to monitor, and to stay within the strict hospital budget. And during our hospital visits, we had to consider what department these gowns were going to be used for. To give you an example, for the imaging room, as you can see here, it was completely prohibited to use any metallic snaps. But for example, for other areas, they actually required us to use them because of their strength and durability. And we also had to consider how the gowns were going to be folded and even what color they were going to have for us to the nurses to be able to rapidly collect and give them the proper one to the rapidly incoming patients. And these were factors that we realized because we considered the whole life cycle of the garment within the hospital system itself. And then the really fun part came when interacting with the nurses and patients. The nurses, for example, would tell us how very often patients would get confused on how to wear the gown, which led to misuse and therefore completely defeated its purpose. And I know because I've definitely worn it wrong more than once. And for the patient side, every patient who's handed a gown receives it in a completely different emotional, mental, and physical state. So this required us to design a garment that would be completely intuitive and quick to understand in any situation. So for that, the best advice came from my two friends, Adriel and Gus Chalkias, and they actually tested the gowns with us and gave us ways on how to improve upon the closures, for them to be super intuitive, for even them to be able to independently wear as individuals who are blind. So after 5 months and more than 70 samples, that we created some samples that looked more like casual shirting, trying to make them look like everyday garments, and other samples focused more on the functionalities. One example, we tried different ways of tying, and one example was that we made, for example, the ties with a loop at the end for people with lower dexterity. And for absolutely every single sample, we made sure that the butt area was covered so as to not leave anything exposed. So the final garment is now sold on Karenwear website and is used currently in hospitals in New York City. And as a patient with a chronic disease, I know I will definitely have to wear one of these more than once. So I wanted it to be better for me and everyone else who has to wear it next time. And what contributed to the success of this project that can be applied to any of the designers here is considering the whole system your object plays a part in. Because when including everyone that will interact with this garment, from the patient to the gown laundry, cleaning facility, all the way to hospital directors, we found various places for intervention to improve upon the overall patient experience. And this allowed the project to have a much higher adoption rate, as it included ideas from everyone involved. And I know that even though this might sometimes be really hard to reach out to all stakeholders, at the end, the design will work more seamlessly in the system it belongs to. Because a hospital gown, though, is complicated, but it's a garment that we have just this temporary struggle with. But for millions of people, dressing every day can be complicated or even an impossible task. And one of these groups of people are actually older adults. So my next proposal was, what if clothing could be designed in a simpler way for older adults to be able to dress and as an effect improve upon their mental health? Because we will all age. And so visiting a rehabilitation center for older adults, I realized how little we consider designing for this stage of our lives. Why don't we think a little longer future for ourselves, our parents, and our grandparents' current experience? Because dressing in the morning can become a habitual process that we don't even think about because it's so easy for us. But I learned that this morning routine, for many of the older adults that I met at the center, it was the time they feared the most. And now, during the pandemic, as I got the chance to come back home and be able to assist my grandmother with her dressing in the morning, I learned how it was stressful and very energy draining for her. So I got the opportunity to design a clothing ensemble at Open Style Lab for Michelle. She's an elderly woman who I met at Riverside Rehabilitation and Healing Center in New York City. Open Style Lab is a research program that teams designers, engineers, and therapists to create functional yet stylish wearable solutions with and for people with disabilities. It is similar to that process of creating a couture gown and tailored to a specific person's needs and tastes, but instead we created daily use clothing to simplify the process of dressing for our clients. So I just melted the first time I met Michelle, her wonderful smile, gentle spirit, and desire to look beautiful for her loving husband. While sitting next to us, she told us a little bit about herself, about loving elephants, and being a collector of all things pink and purple, as you can clearly see in the outfit she was wearing. So while she sat next to us in her light pink jacket, I noticed a lot of stains and rips due to wear and tear due to the rolling in her wheelchair. And something that she said, that it was very important for her to look clean and feminine. That was, in her words, the definition of what beautiful means. So Michelle's daily routine of dressing required full assistance of a caregiver and a mechanical lift. So every morning and night, she would place on the bottom half either pants or a skirt assisted by her caregiver in a lying position. And then for the top, the first layer would normally be a graphic t-shirt with logos, and she would put it all as well in a lying position. Then when she was transferred to her wheelchair using the mechanical lift, she was finally assisted with her jacket. And as any other person, this whole morning routine involved her choosing whatever she felt like wearing on any particular day, but as well, this act involved much more physically and emotionally. So taking into consideration her particular way of dressing and her desire for greater independence, as a team, we started to design. So in collaboration with Jessica Toll, a physical therapist, occupational therapist, and Sid Lamut, an engineer, we came up with creative ideas and different ways of evaluating garments. In each iteration, we considered the necessary metrics for success, the main ones being comfort, speed, simplicity, and aesthetics. So her favorite items were skirts, and therefore we created one for it to be easier and less time consuming for her caregiver and her to put on. So we created a skirt that looked like a skirt, actually had pants on the inside for greater warmth, and that were open all along the side seams. The fabric had pink and purple elephant print that we drew especially for Michelle, whose trunks interlocked in a heart symbolizing her relationship with her husband. And then for the top, she expressed her desire to be able to put on and take off her jacket independently. As she put it, "I want to do it myself." So usually putting on a jacket exceeded her range of motion as she could not reach back. So we created a jacket that only required motions from the front of her body to be able to put on. This jacket included a high back with a highly elastic material, angled sleeves for her seated position, and 2 inserts under the collar so she could easily pull off when she was putting it on independently. So the final iteration was an ensemble called Love Simple that addressed the lack of both stylish and inclusive clothing for the aging population. And the best feeling was to see someone shine in what we created. Michelle felt beautiful and comfortable, but most importantly, this brought a new level of independence. And even though I was not 100% in favor of the bold elephant print, every time she looked at it, she just smiled. And so what I realized through this work is that not being able to dress independently when our bodies change as we age is not due to a disability, but actually a lack of design consideration. It is important to design thinking of our future selves so as we can prepare for a better future quality of life as we age. Because fashion typically puts youth at the forefront, designing only for that stage of life, but clothing significantly affects the quality of life and well-being of the aging population for both practical and personal reasons. Because of course we'll want to maintain the same desire to look and feel good. And after the age of 50, everyone's bodies naturally start to change. So when the average life expectancy is of 80, how could we actually design for a better 30%, the latter 30% of our lives? So I got the opportunity to design for a different way of dressing and mobility when I met Sean Horn. So Sean is an activist, teacher, and a writer who loves fashion, which in a way is influenced by her mother, who always had a connection to the beauty industry. Her mom, as she dresses very stylishly, would encourage Sean on items that she could wear to elevate her body features and her height. Her unique way of walking, using poles to support her body, made it sometimes harder to wear certain everyday pieces. She frequently found herself invited to very important events, including the White House, where she advocated for people with disabilities, elevating positivity around self-perception. Being such an influential woman, she believes in independence, and does not care about asking for help. But she did want to be able to do things such as putting on a coat by herself. So my team and I, composed of engineers and designers, visited her home. We followed her throughout her day and her daily routines. So thinking about what item she would want, she said that she would want a coat that could elevate her look. She could wear for speaking engagements and as well as in the rain. Because while walking down the streets of New York City, she couldn't quickly run to refuge when it started to rain, so she would very often get soaked and had to wait until a cab would arrive. Because holding an umbrella while holding onto her poles, she didn't have an extra hand to do so. So in order to improve upon this situation, we selected a beautiful wool gray fabric that had a coat lining that was water repellent. And to protect her head, we hid a waterproof hood in the collar of her jacket so she could quickly be able to pull up. When observing some of her other coats, she mentioned that she got a lot of wear and tear due to her constant motion of her arms that synchronized with her legs while she walked. So we needed to use a fabric that would be durable and highly elastic for her arms to naturally flow. And so we chose a 4-way fabric that could ease her constant motion and complemented the gray rest of the coat we used for the body. And to be able to put on the coats independently, we tested various openings and dressing methods. And when we noticed when asking Sean to perform this motion over and over was that she always did it in a seated position. And we observed that her coat tail would always get caught on this chair, as you can see in the photo below. So therefore, we created a coat tail that went all the way from the yoke to the bottom. So in non-fashion terms, just a big opening all along the back. As this was a personalized piece though, the personal touch came from Sean's request for an all purple lining for the coat. And as a surprise, we printed on the back wings as a logo shaped for her organization called Beauty Wings. So after many collaborative brainstorming sessions and samples adjustment, she looked radiant in a coat suited for her weather challenges and her needs. As she said, more than a coat, this is a vessel of love, and there's no price for that. She says, with fashion, you can change the way someone sees themselves and how they feel. And what she found the most interesting is that we were able to notice details for improvement, for example, the high coat tail, that was something she would have never noticed before. So this experience was truly about focusing on a person's specific needs and desires. But it actually directly translates onto focusing on people's needs and voices to design clothing that could be literally used by anyone. Because as a designer for Uniqlo in Japan, I had to design garments that would reflect our customers' unique needs and voices and would translate into solutions that would make clothing more comfortable for millions of people around the world. By truly listening to people's needs, by attentive observation and collaborative design, the best and sometimes unexpected ideas are found. And when thinking about how our bodies change, we might notice our bodies the most when they are in pain. Pain can disrupt concentration, restrict movement, and weaken our emotional stability, which interferes with daily tasks and work. And what intrigued me the most are pains that are chronic, meaning they last 3 months or longer. And these can be detrimental and harmful to our bodies, so I wondered if I could do anything about them. But as I'm a designer and not a doctor, I asked myself the following. What if clothing could soothe our bodies during pain, contribute to the recovery process, create a healthier future, avoid the negative effects of pain, physically, mentally, and emotionally? Most current work explores the role that clothing can play in supporting our bodies during pain. My partner, who I conceptualized this with in the photo, is Helena Wang. She's also a Parsons graduate, who I worked with together on the hospital gown project. Her passion lies in designing fashion that looks beyond external beauty to address health issues through the lens of traditional Oriental medicine. As a team, we seek to design clothing at the intersection between health and fashion with a genuine intention to promote human health and help build healthier habits. And one particular pain that ignited our curiosity was menstrual cramps. Many women will relate to that intense pain that never forgets to come for a few days every single month. Some women can't even bear the pain that keeps them lying in bed with a huge heating pads that might be the best soother for temporary relief. And for men to relate as well, have you ever felt that pain that creeps up your back and shoulders and arrives to your neck during a tense day at work or after an intense workout? Or has someone felt that tensing of the joints due to arthritis? If you haven't, I'm sure you know at least one person who has, because currently arthritis affects more than 1 in 3 people between the ages of 18 and 64 in the US. And people might think that pain is just something to endure and ignore, but actually back pain is the leading cause of work disability in the US. And back pain and arthritis affect more than 100 million people and cost over $200 billion per year. So to address this condition that might affect us or our loved ones, we reached out to medical professionals that came both from Western and Eastern practices to learn more about body pains. We learned about a variety of treatments and brainstormed different elements these practices could incorporate into clothes. So then we reached out to people we trusted from a diverse range of ages, abilities, and cultures who all related to having experienced chronic pain, and that also, of course, shared a love for fashion. So we called our gathering Connecting the Dots, which was all about creating a safe community and space to open up about our healing journeys surrounding our bodies, minds, and health. We wanted to brainstorm with them how to address this about body pain through clothes that provide comfort and healing. So before this meeting, we reached out to a psychologist called Sofia Sevilla, who specialized in mind and body connections, because with her guidance, we were able to prepare a gathering that encompassed a guided meditation, art group therapy, and a brainstorming session. And because from the beginning, we sought to use this process as a way to foster overall health. As Sophia had mentioned, when describing holistic health, identifying one's pain, localizing it, and expressing one's feelings towards it paves the path to healing or recovery. And this actually completely opened the doors, but our research and development process could as well form part of the healing process. So even though this gathering had to be done through Zoom, the tension actually grew in the room when talking about pain. We talked about how each one copes with their pain, what colors we associate to it, and how we physically express it through the use of God. Was that body pains provoke a feeling of helplessness. So we were motivated to creatively address these through wearable solutions. So based on our research and personal stories, we started to draw. Each piece references one of our collaborators' ideas and their personal style. And little by little, we are building each piece using 3D software and testing different functionalities. And we're especially making sure that all the pieces are inclusive by design, meaning that we are focusing on designing for different body types and ways of dressing. As this is an ongoing project, we still have a lot to design, research, and test. But we're excited to see how pieces that can easily blend into our everyday lives can actually help alleviate pain and promote well. Because by addressing fashion through the lens of health, I believe garments will someday be able to support our overall health. I look forward towards a future where clothes can promote our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Clothes are the only item we wear directly onto our skin every single day. Therefore, I know they can be used as a tool to promote a healthier future for all. Because imagine if one day doctors could recommend clothes as part of their treatment that can aid in healing while also providing comfort and style. I think that's a treatment we can all look forward to. Thank you.
Yep.
So I think, Aditi, you're going to take over now for the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was beautiful. And I love hearing your story and how you've impacted so many people's lives. It's very touching, and I love your approach to design through other people's eyes very thoroughly. It's very inspiring. So I do have a couple of questions from the audience. One of these questions is, how do you address the affordability of these items for the user?
So affordability is something I have been exploring. So sometimes, of course, when you create a personal garment for one individual, it's what I've done until now is just like more of a, how do you call it, volunteering. I haven't actually charged anything yet for clients, but I think that there are certain features that I find repeated in different designs that could be implemented into daily clothing that could be made more affordable. Like there are certain things, for example, magnetic buttons or magnetic zippers, or just different ways of opening and closing. That is actually things we already use in design. For example, the high coat tail, that is something, there are already shirts open on the back to look sexy, but can actually help someone who has difficulties dressing a lot. So I think it actually doesn't add any cost. It's just designing in a different way.
Okay, wonderful. What has been your favorite project so far?
I like all of them. I like it the most when you get to work with people from completely different fields who bring ideas that as a designer you would never notice. For example, with the engineer on Michelle's garments, she was testing out with different, like she had these different like motors and stuff to test her mobility and motion, as well as occupational therapists knew how to move the person's body in different ways and adjust garments in different ways. So that's the most interesting, and working with people who think.
That's great. I think you cut off just the last little sentence. Working with people?
So I think that working with the people that come from totally different backgrounds has been something in all of these projects, and I really like, and especially seeing the impact on the person that we're designing for.
Incredible. How has your work as a designer changed using 3D virtual design tool aspects?
So I think it's made easier in one way because you can test tons of different options without having to cut fabric and spend lots of money on trying different ways of sewing or putting on garments. And I think it gives much more possibilities in which you can change the avatar's body to different body types. Of course, you still need the personal interaction, but it reduces a lot of the costs and times involved with actual physical sampling.
Okay, awesome. And you use that technology frequently, or are you starting to dabble with it?
I've used it maybe for more than a year now, maybe 1 year or 2 years.
Very cool. Do you think it'd be possible to get a place where some of these solutions could become more mass market?
So I think a few brands are addressing it. Of course, like very few brands. Zappos, Tommy Hilfiger. There's a marketplace called Patty and Rick for inclusive design. There's an amazing designer called Lucy Jones who makes accessories for wheelchair users and for anyone else, which I love wearing. And so I think that little by little, there are more designers addressing the needs of different body types and different ways of dressing.
Okay. Where do you find your inspiration?
I think mostly it comes from the conversations and the lives of the people I've worked with. And if not, usually from nature, a lot of things from nature. And yeah, just more like daily observation of daily life, how people live, a lot of workwear. Like I love seeing how people like mechanical people or construction people or nurses and doctors. I like that, like a lot of workwear.
Okay. Very cool. We still have room for a couple of questions if people want to submit their questions. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to drum up a couple questions, and if not, Cami, this was amazing. You're always so inspiring to talk to.
Thank you.
I mean, I know part of your family, and I know they glow in awe, and they're so proud of you. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I hope, like, I'm most excited of like future collaborations and to see where this goes.
Yeah, and thank you for participating with AIGA Unidos. It's always so incredible to showcase not just the incredible talent that we have in the Latinx community, but also how much heart is put into the work as well.
Yes, definitely. I think that that's something that Latin people bring.
Some flavor. Do you want to? I'll share my screen to just do closing remarks.
Go ahead.
And these are the questions. Oh, there is one more question that just popped up. What do you think is the future of Hispanic fashion?
I think that's something that has always like been within me. Like, there are people who use beautiful traditional textiles, and I think the future is in like using materials that are naturally available and are not being used. For example, I had a friend exploring different, of course, dyeing is one part, but also the actual fibers of plants and materials that we find in our countries in South America or Latin America. And also, of course, through expression of different cultures that are sometimes dying because of globalization, traditional textile techniques, traditional aesthetics and colors and pigments. I think that, and as well, though, I feel like in a way, even though my designs don't directly address any cultural aspect, I think it's that way of like connecting with people as a community to design that I feel that is an expression of my Latin identity and what I've done. So I think a lot in material, but also like connection with people that might be something that comes more naturally to us as Latin people who love to talk and be in community.
Yeah, we definitely love to talk. That is true. We're a loud bunch, but I love it.